Ukrainian drones have reached deep into Russian oil refining, so in total up to 17% of capacity has been knocked out. That's more than 1 million barrels per day, and the European Union, together with Britain, is now lowering the price cap on Russian oil to $47.5. This is a blow to the budget of the Russian Federation, and it is precisely the coordinated actions of Ukraine and the European Union that are producing results. This is one of those cases when money becomes a weapon. The more strikes on Russian oil refineries, the less ability they have to produce the product. And the product that does get produced runs into the new oil price cap, which also cuts revenues. So in this episode, I suggest we break down this scheme together, the connection between Ukrainian strikes on Russian oil facilities and the European Union and Britain's sanctions against that same oil industry. My name is Alexei Pechi. Today is September 1st. Let's go through this step by step. But before we begin, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, leave a like, write any comment you want, and be sure to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. So, in order to even understand the mechanism of how Ukrainian drone strikes on oil refineries work and the European Union's sanctions on Russian oil. Here, I'll quote an economist that Western media are citing right now. Oil refining is not just a single control panel. It's valves, heat exchangers, pipes, catalysts, turbines, compressors, and so on. When a unit catches fire, you lose not only the product, but also disrupt the entire supply chain from raw materials to transportation. Downtime delays resources and repairs are force majeure in contracts, causing disputes with wholesalers and regulators over domestic prices. A war of words can be hidden. A war at the installations of an oil refinery cannot. This paragraph contains a simple meaning. When the Afipsky, Ilsky and Ryazan oil refineries are burning, when capacities are shut down on the Volga, in Ust-Luga, you can't make up for all this with some pompous statements. It's a war of oil refineries. What are you doing? You start pushing more crude oil instead of more expensive petroleum products, you lose your margin and you run even more into logistics, which are under Western sanctions. That's how this connection works. And it's important to note here that a key indicator of successful Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian refineries is the gasoline shortage in Russia's domestic market. Reuters estimates Russian oil companies have lost 17% of refinery capacity as of today. Due to drone attacks that have affected at least 10 oil refineries and led to the complete shutdown of at least 5 of them, Novokuybishevsky, Saratovsky, Volgogradsky, Syzeransky and Kuybishevsky. Also, the Rosneft plant in Ryazan, which supplies fuel to the Moscow region of Russia, has shut down half of its capacity. The fate of the Novoshakhtinsky oil refinery in Rostov is still unclear after it burned for 5 days following a drone attack. Now, about the price cap on Russian oil. The old $60 has finally become just a piece of paper, and everyone has forgotten about it. The new regime is about $47.5 per barrel. This better reflects the real risks and reduces some of the shadow fleet's rent. This cap has come into effect as of today. Insurance and port filters are becoming stricter without transparent verified oil origin and without proper insurance for the condition of the vessel. Calls and repairs in Western ports are being closed. For grey schemes, this leads to higher costs and delays, and in this industry, delays waste money. There are also some interesting points about the consequences for the Russian Federation's budget. Less oil refining means less excise taxes and less export revenue from products. More crude oil means greater dependence on the whims of buyers and discounts. Here's the key part. India and China are bargaining harder, knowing Russia has problems at home. Don't think that China and India don't see the situation. They do. They see that Russia itself is refining oil, but it can't do it in the same volumes as before. That's why it will dump more crude oil on the market to try to stabilize its income. If making oil products fails, let's flood the market with crude oil. But since there are only a limited number of buyers, China and India are demanding even bigger discounts for themselves. The ruble, regional budgets and salaries all feel the impact quickly, not in a year, When do these levers start? The decision on gasoline prices. For the war, this means one thing: less easy money to cover gaps and to buy loyalty. But it's important to note here that Ukraine also decided to strike at the facilities that transport crude oil and petroleum products to Europe. That is, not just at the refineries. The strike targets both processing and fuel transportation, maximizing the impact on the enemy's economic resources. So, last week, the armed forces of Ukraine struck a strategic oil pumping station in the Bryansk region near the settlement of Naitopovichi, which pumps about 10 million tons of diesel fuel per year. Last week, Ukrainian forces attacked the Ryazan-Moscow oil pipeline and key Druzhba pipeline facilities, especially the Unecha hub. The destruction of the Unecha station significantly limits fuel supplies not only to Russia, but also to Belarus and Europe. And against the backdrop of these strikes, Russia also felt the impact of international sanctions 18. The European Union's package of restrictions has significantly reduced the price of Russian oil, which has worsened the budget crisis. The crisis is now spreading to the coal industry as well. For example, Kuzbas is now closing mines one after another, which hasn't happened even in the 1990s. The aviation industry has also found itself on the verge of collapse, because once again it's the combination of Ukrainian and Western sanctions. The constant closure of airports due to drone attacks and the difficulties with aircraft maintenance because of sanctions make flights unprofitable and unpredictable. The problems have also affected Russia's automotive industry. Sales of KAM-AZ trucks have dropped by 60%, profits for 2024 have decreased 28 times, and the company has switched to a 4-day work week. And other factories, in particular the Gorky automobile plant and the Likino bus plant, are also being forced to cut salaries by 20%. The situation at Gazprom is also critical. Gas production is now at its lowest level since 1985, which worsens the Kremlin's financial ability to wage war. That's why Russia is forced to seek help from China, North Korea, and to negotiate with India at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit. The effect for Ukraine and its allies is clear. This is an adjustment to Moscow's negotiating position. When, excuse my expression, the cough of the budget can be heard even on television. Well, it's very hard to lecture even uneducated Russians about "we will survive any price cap, sanctions don't bother us," and so on. You'd have to be a really foolish Russian not to see that Ukrainian drones are actually systematically destroying the oil refining industry. You have to be careful, or frankly stupid, not to connect the attacks on oil refineries with the lines at gas stations. Secondly, this coincides in time with the European hunt for Russia's shadow fleet and the mixing of oil in third countries. The higher the risk in the Red and Black Seas, the more sense it makes to keep the rules strict. And thirdly, this is a good response to those who argue that it would be better to strike only at military depots and bases. Why are the armed forces of Ukraine striking the oil refining industry? The thing is, in 2025, let's put it this way, these depots and military bases are also barrels at the oil refineries. As you can see, this has an effect. Therefore, as they say, the combination of Ukrainian and Western sanctions definitely produces results, so I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Bye, everyone.